Hello, this is Stuart Richland from 420lawoffice.com and here on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for touching base. Well, it's no great surprise to those of you who have been watching the various trends in this area that unfortunately the California Supreme Court has trimmed the sales of medical marijuana storefront dispensaries here in the state of California. Well, what we've seen is no great surprise given the fact that we've had many decisions, including the Cruz decision and the employment case in which we found the California Supreme Court was willing to give a great deal of deference to the law as written, but they weren't going to be expanding it as written. And unfortunately, neither Prop 215 nor SB 420 are as explicit as they really need to be when it comes to things like employment rights, zoning, parental rights, etc., licensing rights. So one of the things that I'm now working on, and I'm really proud to announce by way of this YouTube, and then I'll get back to talking a little bit about the case and the upshot. One of the things that I'm working on now with a whole bunch of really cool people is the legalization campaign. And the legalization campaign is going to go forward for 2014 and 2016 as of our current plans. And I was charged with, and I wrote a proposed ordinance, a proposition. And, I'd seen the other one, and it didn't read very effortlessly, so I just went ahead and wrote one out and edited it a few times and submitted it to a bunch of the patient groups. And I was really impressed and happy that they liked my work and gave me so much love. And now it looks like this thing may be the basis for what Californians will have the opportunity to vote upon very soon. If so, I will certainly do my best not to brag about it too much. But the language that I included in my proposal is really a lot of what the issues that the California Supreme Court had, my language would have handled. For instance, really the zoning issue that is in the hands of local governments right now is one of the hindrances that medical marijuana collectors have had. If it's possible for cities to zone the activity away or not license it, then where do patients get their medicine? So what is the upshot? What would happen if your city now has all of its dispensaries closed? So what is the upshot? What is going to happen for patients in particular city areas or county areas where a ban gets instituted? Well, California law currently allows 4 different categories of defenses for medical marijuana activity. There's the individual defense for patients' use of cannabis, as well as growing it and transporting it for their personal use, and according to the amounts that are reasonably necessary for their medical conditions. And that's under the current case that controls that, which is the Kelly case from 2010. Now, with reference to caregivers, there is this second category of defense called caregivers. Now, what's really cool about a caregiver is that the government actually makes available cards. Each county has this program. The cards allow you to identify yourself as a caregiver, which means that you're a primary caregiver for another patient or patients, generally up to 10 patients. And to be a caregiver, one has to have a pre-existing relationship with the patient in which one cares for the health, safety, or housing of that patient. So that defense remains untouched. So some patients who currently now are relying on the dispensary system may have to shift over to finding someone in their life who qualifies as a caregiver. Now, an interesting and upsetting problem happens for a particular patient who may not have someone in their life who is responsible at the moment for their health, safety, or housing other than themselves. If that's the case, then they really don't have someone who can qualify as a caregiver. So the options include trying to find a dispensary in another city which allows it, or trying to become self-sufficient with reference to cannabis. And both of those have difficult aspects, as you can imagine. When it comes to the going to another city solution, I think that that's going to have an unintended consequence here in the state of having a patchwork of different rules in different cities and then having people rush to different cities who are patients because they need their medicine. But maybe that'll be a boom for some cities. With reference to growing one's own medicine, there are some patients who are simply too sick to do it, or who have minor children or objecting adults in the same household. Um, and there are also people who own their own homes and thus would be subject to federal forfeiture if they grew their own marijuana in their homes. So they must rely on someone else to do it, or else they run the risk of losing their property. I think that what will happen in those cities that completely eliminate dispensaries is that we will see they will have a decrease of tax revenue and an increase in crime, as those people whose medical marijuana needs were previously satisfied by the dispensaries, some percentage of them will go back to the black market. Of course, black market cannabis is not taxed. It's not regulated in any way. There's no responsibility. There's no assurance with reference to quality and quantity. And unfortunately, the black market dealers, in addition to cannabis, often offer these people other drugs, such as heroin and cocaine drugs and speed and other things. So what happens is we are sending patients, and some of them are young people, into the hands of the black market in those cities. Now, the good news is that any city that bans, there is a political solution when the medical marijuana people get organized, and that is to get rid of the politicians who are banning marijuana and preventing state rights from being exercised to their fullest extent in that particular city. That's the local solution. And then finally, the statewide solution, which I mentioned, is I'm really excited to be working on the proposition, and I'll be putting more about that on this site as it comes along, including letting you see the language as it evolves. But it isn't quite gelled yet. Of course, as far as your activity and your need for information, if you're a patient, you need my consultation. I offer a $500 consultation that includes my book. This is my $500 consultation notebook. It contains all kinds of original materials that you need to see, as well as my comic book. And of course, I've updated my presentation as of today to accommodate the decision that came down at 10 this morning. Here is the collective kit. This is a nonprofit corporate kit, which is a do-it-yourself corporation book together with lots of hookups and information that you need. The collective defense has not been abrogated by this decision. Only storefront dispensaries are affected. I look forward to seeing you really soon. Remember, a collective is a group of California patients who may join together to cultivate, transport, and distribute marijuana among their patient members. And, of course, underlining and on top of this whole situation is the fact that federal law continues to hold that marijuana is a felony to grow, sell, or distribute, and that it has no medical use, regardless of whatever the studies that you may know about say. The federal government does not acknowledge those as qualifying to take marijuana out of the current scheduling. Unfortunately, in the recent scheduling case, the court only looked at the research as of the date of the filing, which, although that makes legal procedural sense, it does leave the door open for a further review of that decision based upon the more recent research, which I encourage you to check out at pubmed.org, I believe. Alrighty then, thank you very much for touching base here on my YouTube channel and at 420lawoffice.com. A little late to get rid of that frog, but I got to say goodbye with a clear voice. Thank you very much. See you soon. By the way, I'll take the Pepsi challenge with any other attorney on my comprehensive 1-hour consultation on medical marijuana law. I'd be very happy to give you my book and walk you through it. Just to give me a call and we'll book your appointment. It is $500, and I also have an upsell, which is my $1,000 do-it-yourself corporate kit. Thanks very much for touching base.